Coming up on Cannabis Coast to Coast News with Alaina Pinto this week.
And it's an honor now to sign this incredible bill and get our country working again. Thank you.
The government may be back in business, but it took putting the intoxicating hemp industry on a year notice.
And we do not see this as recriminalization. We see 1 year to regulate, not 1 year to ban. And that's where we are marching.
We have more reaction from the industry and the leaders from the U.S. Hemp Roundtable, including General Counsel Jonathan Miller.
Unfortunately, that bill also gave or acknowledged the jurisdiction over the sale and production of CBD and other hemp products was delegated to the FDA. The FDA pledged that they were going to start regulating our products. Unfortunately, it's 7 years later and they've done nothing.
That complete interview in its entirety at the end of the C Block. Plus, why are major MSOs happy with the decision that could wipe out a $28 billion unregulated part of the cannabis industry? And what impact will this have on rescheduling or any other cannabis reforms at the federal level? All that and more on Cannabis Coast to Coast News with Alaina Pinto next.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Cannabis Coast to Coast News, WPCM TV's weekly report on the fight to end cannabis prohibition in the United States and around the world. I'm Alaina Pinto. A week ago, the United States Senate saw 9 Democrats break ranks with their party in order to get the government back to work and pass a budget bill. In that bill, an amendment was added that could effectively wipe out 95% of the THC-infused hemp-derived products that has grown into a $28 billion business. This all started with the Farm Bill of 2018. At that time, Congress effectively gave a legal definition of hemp, which had less than 0.3% of THC in dry weight, the intoxicating cannabinoid in the cannabis sativa plant. In that bill, the FDA was charged with coming up with the regulations for the plant, but 7 years later, still nothing has happened. Now you have hundreds of thousands of workers employed in this part of the cannabis industry and revenue over $28 billion. Even the leader of the Senate, Mitch McConnell, admitted that 2018 Farm Bill and the so-called loophole was a mistake. This new law will not go into effect for 1 year, so the industry and lawmakers still will have time to do something about the industry that was created by accident. In their defense, the hemp industry has been looking for regulations since that bill was passed, but companies started to create products that were effectively legal, but were underregulated. There was no age gating regulations, no testing, and these products started to show up at gas stations, smoke shops, and convenience stores. On top of this, the other side to this plant that was legal for adults to use in 24 states is overregulated. So the government created 2 sides to the same plant. One that was overregulated, tested, and licensed for distribution, and the other was the exact opposite, despite both industries developing products for sale from the same plant. One of the most well-respected authorities on hemp is Thomas Winstanley, the executive vice president of edibles.com. For 5 years, he worked at Theory Wellness, a licensed cannabis dispensary in multiple states, and now is on the other side of the plant. Executive producer Jimmy Young talked with Thomas on Friday.
Thanks, Alaina. As we continue to look at the fallout and get reaction from the hemp industry about this week's news, I'm so happy to be joined by an old buddy from Massachusetts. His name is Thomas Winstanley. He used to be the chief marketing officer of Theory Wellness for, I'm pretty sure, about 5 years, and now is an executive VP for a company called edibles.com. So, Thomas, thank you so much for joining us. And the thing that I knew that where I knew you were and what you were doing is when I was reading quotes this week, you were so eloquent on so many of the newsletters that I read. So look, walk me through, did you expect this to happen? There was, I certainly understand enough of the backroom stuff that has been going on, but did you have any warning? Did you think that this issue would actually bring the government back to work?
So I think we have always had a consideration knowing that we are not on stable ground from a policy perspective. We've constantly fought to gain policy at the federal level that would codify the industry in a way that the Farm Bill did not, with consumer protections, a four-pillar of regulatory guidance to allow this category to continue to grow. We've seen some of that regulatory implementation at a state level, but not quite at the federal level. We knew also that Mitch McConnell is passionate about this and that he was not going to back down, especially in a swan song of his political career. Did we expect it to manifest the way that it did around a government shutdown? Probably not. Did we see it coming? We always had an inkling that it was possible, and it wasn't until I think Wednesday that we heard that this language that we had been fighting, a poison pill, if you will, had been slipped into the minibus package, which was very unfortunate.
Yeah, absolutely. And now I've learned a lot. I watched the Dales report this week. I'm going to give them credit. And he explained how the bourbon lobby, and by the way, my naivete, who the hell knew if there was even a bourbon lobby?
A lobby for everything, Jimmy.
I guess so. And that's how this is how this country works. And I've had a great lesson on the one thing that this country does better than anything is delay, delay, and delay. And then the only time they make any noise in the government is when they have to pass a bill like the appropriations bill. And of course, the government could shut down at the end of January again, right? I mean, that's pretty much how. If the government is the largest business in the world, I have no idea how they stay in business. I mean, that's how I think.
By procrastinating and doing everything at the last minute and shoehorning as much in as possible. And I think that's what we were subjected to. And unfortunately, it's very difficult when we are actively lobbying. We're one of the only industries that goes to Capitol Hill and says, please regulate us.
Right.
Please put laws on us. And here's what we recommend for you to do, because for people like Mitch McConnell, the worst irony is that 85% of his concerns are concerns that we, as good operators in the category, have concerns about. And yet, political action and theater at its finest came down to the wire and was a let's overstuff something because there cannot be thoughtful discussion around it.
The rest of that interview will be released on Thursday of next week in our 1v1 special report. There's another amendment to that appropriations bill that was put in place this week that once again hurts our veterans. After making some progress towards reform over the last year, this latest appropriations bill puts the hemp industry on a one-year notice, also shuts out veterans from access to medical cannabis at VA hospitals. It was easy for the Republican-controlled government to leave that provision out of its budget. We have to ask, though, how can lawmakers continue to prohibit doctors at the VA from prescribing cannabis to the men and women who fight for our freedoms in our military, especially in legal states? That is a question that continues to get ignored, yet has been on the agenda for years. And what makes matters even worse is that in addition to the ban on hemp products, this appropriations bill left out cannabis access through VA hospitals and announced it on Veterans Day this week. We sure could use some clarity on the reasons why that keeps happening, and opioids are being prescribed like candy through the VA. As you can imagine, Jimmy Young was pretty busy this week, as was our hemp reporter, Kerry Hinkle. And this past Friday afternoon, both had a conversation with the general counsel for the U.S. Hemp Roundtable, Jonathan Miller. He was on his way back to his state of Kentucky and still had time to talk from his car.
Thanks, Alaina. It's been a difficult week in the world of hemp. And we are so fortunate to be talking with two people. One, of course, you may know if you watch Cannabis Coast to Coast News on a regular basis. His name's Kerry Hinkle. It's his beat. And he used to work for the U.S. Hemp Roundtable, which is the #1 lobby group in Washington, D.C. And we're so fortunate to have their general counsel, Jonathan Miller, joining us, too, as he cruises around is it the greater Kentucky or the greater Maryland, Washington, D.C. area, Jonathan?
I am heading from Lexington to Louisville.
Okay,
Kentucky.
there you go. And You will definitely have some insight on what's going on and what happened this week. So I guess the first question I do want to ask is, how in the world did this happen, Jonathan?
Well, we had a big victory back in 2018,
Yeah.
and thanks to Mitch McConnell, who really got us where we were going. Hemp was legalized after prohibition for decades, and specifically, hemp's derivatives, cannabinoids, and extracts were also made clear to be legal because CBD had been around for a bit, and we wanted to make sure that CBD would be covered. Unfortunately, that bill also gave or acknowledged the jurisdiction over the sale and production of CBD and other hemp products was delegated to the FDA. The FDA pledged that they were going to start regulating our products. Unfortunately, it's 7 years later and they've done nothing. They even a few years ago said, after investigating this for 4 years, that we need more authority from Congress to do this. And so what happened was, while this CBD market grew and other great hemp products, such as hemp beverages like the ones that Kerry's company produces, there are also some bad products out there. There are products that are marketed to kids and that have bad manufacturing practices, or are copycats of Doritos or candy bars, and it's gotten a lot of people upset. And so there are two solutions to that. One is the FDA can finally start regulating these products, as states have started to. The other solution, unfortunately, has been we should ban everything, not just the bad products, but the good ones as well. And ironically, it was Mitch McConnell who is the one that drafted this legislation, which is basically would ban 95% of all hemp products if we're not able to overturn it in the next year.
We will be running that entire interview on the C block of Cannabis Coast to Coast News at the end of this week's program. But if you want to know some inside politics on how all this happened, the Dales report shared information about the powerful bourbon whiskey lobby that was instrumental in putting some money into this congressional fight. In this country, it does seem to be those who have the most money can dictate policy in Washington, D.C. The biggest MSO saw the hemp industry as a threat, as did big alcohol. So those groups were far more influential and impactful than the fledgling hemp interests. With more now from Washington, D.C., we welcome back Andrew Behringer.
I'm Andrew Behringer with the Washington, D.C. report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Positive news. The government is open and I am happy to be reporting again. Downside, how did this shutdown affect the cannabis and hemp industry? Well, President Trump has signed a federal spending bill that will ban most consumable hemp products, reversing course on legislation he signed during his first term in office. Now, this move comes tucked inside an appropriations package passed after a weeks-long government shutdown that brought critical agencies to halt, the longest in history. Now, the Senate approved the spending bill on Monday, followed by a narrow House vote Wednesday, 222 votes to 209. Now, hidden within this legislation is a provision that recriminalizes hemp products containing THC, products that have flourished since the 2018 Farm Bill legalized the hemp crop. Now, under these new rules, which take effect 1 year from now, legal hemp products will be limited to just 0.4 milligrams of total THC per container. Now, that's a dramatic shift from the current law, which allows products with less than 0.3% Delta 9 THC by dry weight. Now, the ban will now cover Delta 8 other THC isomers and cannabinoids deemed to have similar effects. This legislation also prohibits synthesized cannabinoids and bans intermediate hemp products marked directly to consumers. Now, within the next 90 days, the FDA must publish comprehensive lists of naturally occurring cannabinoids and THC compounds. This ban faced a lot of bipartisan resistance. Now, hemp advocates warn that the ban sweeps too broadly, affecting even non-intoxicating CBD products that people use for medical purposes. But a White House spokesperson confirmed the president specifically supports the hemp language. Some legislators are suggesting that this delay could allow lawmakers to create a proper regulatory framework rather than an outright ban. Now, the spending bill also drew criticism for what it left out. Bipartisan provisions that would have allowed Veterans Affairs doctors to recommend medical cannabis in legal states were stripped from the final package, despite earlier approval from both chambers. Now, this omission coming just days before Veterans Day. With the clock now ticking on the one-year implementation deadline, the question now is whether can we build enough support to pass remedial legislation before the ban takes effect. Well, that's the Washington, D.C. report. I'm Andrew Behringer. Thanks for having me back at Cannabis Coast to Coast News. See you next week.
So what impact will this have on the rescheduling or legalization movement at the federal level? Well, there continues to be murmurs from the White House that rescheduling of cannabis is still being discussed. But once again, no one thinks that might happen anytime soon. In fact, many think the Republican-controlled government will wait until next fall before the midterms in order to impact voter turnout. We start our state reports now in Virginia with Joe Parsons.
I'm Joe Parsons with the Virginia Cannabis Connection from Higher Education's Coffee Talk, sponsored by 97.5 through WV and reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. One of the champion pioneers of the 2024 and 2025 adult use cannabis bills is eager to work with the new administration and present another round of bills before the General Assembly. Senator Aaron Rouse from District 22 was the lead author working alongside Representative Paul Krizik to craft the bills that received bipartisan support and were ultimately shut down by Governor Glenn Youngkin, not once, but twice in a row. In an interview with WVEC's 13 News Now, Senator Rouse said, quote, "Any measure that we can take to find revenue, I'm very optimistic about that approach," end quote. He further added, quote, "We in Virginia have to take every step we can to make sure we find revenues that strengthen our communities, that strengthens the education process, that puts food on the table, and gets people back to work," end quote. He's been very eager to work with Governor-elect Spanberger to finally enact the will of the people that voted for adult use legalization in 2021. Governor-elect Spanberger has gone on the record saying that she will, quote, "work with the leaders in the General Assembly to find a path forward that both prioritizes public safety and grows Virginia's economy. And that part is establishing a formalized, legal, emerging cannabis market," end quote. I'll keep everyone updated as developments arise on this year's cannabis bills, so stay tuned. November is a month to remember the veterans, and this year the Virginia Veterans Canna Competition did just that. The competition was held this year in Pamplin, Virginia at the Second 40 to 420 Farms. I was able to get out there and see the veterans support one another and have a blast while doing it. Along with multiple food vendors, veteran craft vendors, they even had a supportive pony booth. Games ranged from tug of war to bong pong. All the proceeds went directly to the veterans, and you can bet that I'll be there for next year as well. I'd like to thank Brian Natsky and Amy Ward for inviting me to this terrific event. So a very special happy Veterans Day to all the heroes that keep America free every day. You can trust I will continue to fight to free the plant for you in the future. Well, that's going to do it from Higher Education's Coffee Talk, sponsored by 97.5 3WV in Charlottesville. And as always, reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News, I'm Joe Parsons. Until next time, stay lifted.
That'll do it for the A block, but we have more state reports coming up, plus more industry reaction from the new rules for the hemp industry as Cannabis Coast to Coast News continues after this.
I think there's a huge irony in this where Mitch McConnell is the master of unintended consequences.
Your cannabis business could be overpaying by hundreds of thousands of dollars in federal income taxes because of one simple assumption that you're making about your accountant. A dispensary owner in Colorado called me frustrated as hell. He'd been working with the same accountant for 3 years. His accountant said, "What's 471C?" Here's what the ignorance of that accountant was costing this business owner. $180,000 every single year for 3 years. 471C has been around since 2017. We're talking about an 8-year-old tax provision that many cannabis CPAs don't fully understand. 471C is one of the most complex and highly debated tax strategies in the cannabis industry. If you want to make sure you're not leaving any money on the table, I'm offering free 471c reviews this month. Link in the description.
Accounting Buds has grown into Buds Group, the same award-winning quality, now with more service offerings. Buds Group, your best buds in the biz.
Looking for PR that over-delivers on expectations? At Maverick Public Relations, they pair big agency experience with personalized attention. From launching award-winning brands to securing top-tier media hits, their data-driven communications team helps visionary leaders and entrepreneurs rise above the media noise. Maverick PR is responsive, collaborative, and relentless about results and ROI. Visit themaverickpr.com and make headlines together.
If you want to make history, if you want to be part of history, if you want to say you helped legalize marijuana in America, now is the time to join us.
Hi there, I'm Ava from WPCM TV, your friendly media host. Big news, MJ BizCon 2025 is coming up December 2nd to 5th at the Las Vegas Convention Center, the premier business-to-business cannabis business conference and expo, where over 200 speakers, over 70 sessions, and a massive show floor await. If your brand is ready to make serious noise in the cannabis industry, here's your chance. We've got a few open slots for short on-site brand media interviews with our WPCM TV news crew. Picture this, your logo, your message, and your team in front of a professional camera, captured during the biggest cannabis gathering of the year. And yes, we promise we'll keep the jokes light. Why jump in? Because MJ BizCon isn't just another trade show, it's where the industry connects, learns, sources new products, explores innovation, and builds relationships that matter. Spots are limited and moving fast. If you're ready to elevate your brand and grab national-level exposure with WPCM TV on site, let's lock this in now. Click the link in the description, drop us a message, and we'll save a media slot just for you. Let's make your brand one of the stars of MJ BizCon. See you in Vegas.